Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Aleph. Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the bottom. The Gemara brings a pasuk from Yeshaya Hanavi, explain to Klal Yisrael if they want to get protection from Sancherev, king of Assyria, and they want to maintain their peace and tranquility, then he said the following: V'hoya emunas itecha, the stability of your time, choisen yeshuos, the strength of salvation, chochma v'das, knowledge and wisdom, yiras Hashem hi oitzoroi, the yiras Hashem will be its preservation. Says the Gemara to Darshan the following pasuk: Omer Reish Lakish, Mai dichsi v'hoya emunas itechon, choisen yeshuos, chochma v'das. Emunas, says the Gemara, this is a drasha, Reish Lakish says, on the Seder of the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Emunas Seder Zroim. After all, when a farmer plants the seeds, so he plows and he plants and he works hard in the field, but after all, he's totally dependent on the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore he has to have emunah. Or alternatively, you can explain that it's Seder Zroim because even after he plants and plows and reaps, and all of the bounty is then harvested, at the end of the day, he realizes it's not his hard work that produced this grain or whatever it is that produces, but rather it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing all of that bounty. Itecha, your times, Zeh Seder Moyed, of course, referring to Seder Moyed. Choisen, strength, Zeh Seder Nashim. There's a beautiful minhag in Klal Yisrael that the Kala, when she enters the chuppah, she surrounds and encircles her chasen 7 times. She's the strength of her husband. Yeshuos, Zeh Seder Nezikin, when a person knows his responsibility towards his fellow man's property and he's careful, therefore, not to then do any damages. Chachmos, Zeh Seder Kodshim. As it says, there's more chachma in Seder Kodshim than any other Seder. Vidas, and knowledge, Zeh Seder Taharos, referring to Taharos. The knowledge a person has to then be wary of. What are the things that are going to metame, and what are the things that he can then have tahara. Va'afilu hachi, and still the pasuk goes on to say, Yiras Hashem hi oitzoroi. And still, Yiras Hashem, even after all of the Seder of Mishnayos, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, Yiras Hashem, it is its storehouse. Omar Rave B'shosh Machnisin Adam Ladin. Oimim Loi. At the time when a person leaves this world, there's a judgment. And they say to him the following 6 questions, based on the verse that we just stated. Nosata v'notata be'emuna. Did you deal with the utmost integrity and honesty in your business dealings? That's a reference to the word emunas. Then it says in the pasuk, Itecha kovata itim la Torah. Did you set fixed times to learn Torah? In plural, both day and night, like it says, Vahagisa bo yomom volayla. A minimum of some time during the day and sometime that night that's fixed for Torah learning. The third part of the pasuk that says, Choisen, referring to asakta bepiri v'rivir. Did you then involve yourself in procreating and having children? Tzipisa li Yeshua. Did you look forward to salvation for the coming of Mashiach? Pilpalta bechachma. Did you delve into wisdom? And finally, havanta davar mitoich davar. Did you understand one matter, and within that one matter, understand something else? Va'afilu hachi, and the rest of the pasuk goes on to say, Yiras Hashem hi oitzara in iloi loi. If you have Yiras Hashem, then good, yes. And if not, not. That means that if they're all of the limud haTorah, if it doesn't have Yiras Hashem together with it, then it won't be lasting. Mashal la'adam shenamar l'shlucha. It's a parable, a mashal to somebody who says to his agent, Hela likur chitin la'aliyah. Bring for me an amount, a kur of chitin, of wheat, to the attic. Holach vehela loi. The shliach went and he brought up the wheat to the attic. Omar le aravta li bohen kav chumtin. Did you mix with it a measure of chumtin, of preservatives? Omar le lav. The shliach said, I didn't. Omar le mutav im lo helisa. Better that you didn't bring it up altogether, because now it's going to get spoiled. And therefore all of that effort of bringing it up is now useless. In fact, now it's going to be worm-eaten and get destroyed. Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, the Beis HaMedrash of Rabbi Yishmael was taught the following. Me'arev odam kav chumtin bekur shel tevua ve'eno choishesh. In regards to one who sells a kur of tevua, he can mix with it a measure of chumtin, of preservatives, and it's not going to be considered to be then mismeasuring and misleading the buyer that the measurement is not a full kur of tevua because it has chumtin inside. In other words, when a person is going to set aside some of his learning of Torah to learn Sifrei Yira, then that's not going to be a waste of time. In fact, that's much necessary in order to then allow his Torah to be then lasting. There's a famous story that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was once asked by a balabos, and he said, I only have 1 hour a day to learn. What should I do during that 1 hour? Says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, learn Musar during that 1 hour, and you'll see that you'll have more than 1 hour a day to learn Torah. In other words, the Sifrei Yira will bring a person to the awareness of his responsibilities and the value of his avodas Hashem. Omar Rabbi bar Rav Huna, kol adam sheyesh bo Torah ve'ein bo yiras shamayim. Anybody who has Torah, he learns, but he doesn't have yiras shamayim. Doime legizbar shemasru loy mafteichos hapnimiyos umafteichos hachitzonios loy masru loy. He's compared to a treasurer who was given the keys of the inner gates, but in terms of the outer gates, he doesn't have access. And therefore he can't enter in order to then go to the inner part, because he can't even get through the outer gate. In other words, when it comes to Yiras Hashem, if a person is lacking Yiras Hashem, then he won't then have the Yira to then be shomer, the Torah and the mitzvahs properly, whereby he's not going to then have the Torah affect his personality and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the right way. Umachriz Rabbi Yonai screamed, he announced, Chaval, what a loss, al delesle darta vitara ledarta ovid. What woe is a loss to the one who doesn't have a chotzer, he doesn't have a courtyard, but a gate to the courtyard he does have. Which you see, you can picture for yourself, a person makes a gate and it leads to nothing. There's no courtyard behind the gate. So too says Rabbi Yonai, a person who doesn't have a courtyard, referring to Yiras Hashem, even though he might have the gate, but the purpose that the Torah is supposed to lead towards is the Yiras Hashem. And if he doesn't therefore have the Yiras Hashem, then he has the gate without any chotzer behind it. Omar Rav Yehuda loy bora HaKadosh Baruch Hu es olamoi elo kidei sheyiu milafonov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not create his world only to have awareness before him. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk in Koheles, Veha Elokim asa sheyiu milfam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world that a person should have awareness of him. And the greater the awareness, the greater the sensory perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, the greater Yiras Hashem he will have. And the greater purpose he is fulfilling in acquiring this tremendous commodity called Yiras Hashem in this world. Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Elazar Havu Yasbe, they were sitting together. Chalif va'ozil Rabbi Yankov bar Acha. Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha walked past them. Omar lechad lechavrei. One said to his friend, Niku mikamei, the gvar dochil chatoinhu. Let us get up, let's stand up before Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha. Let's show him respect. Because after all, he's somebody who's a Yiras Chet. Omar le idoch, the other one turned to him and said, Niku mikamei de gavar bar uryanhu. Let us get up before him and show him kavod, because he's a ben Torah. Omar le amina loch ana de gavar dochil chatoin hu va'amris li at Bar Uryanhu. I said we should get up and respect him because he's a Yiras Chet. And you come back and say to me, let us get up and respect him because he's a Ben Torah. Meaning that a Yiras Chet is stronger a reason to mechabed Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha. Says the Gemara, Tistayin Rabbi Elazar hu the Omar the Gavar Dochir Chatoinhu. Let us conclude that it was Rabbi Elazar that was the one who said that he is a bar, he's somebody who is a Yiras Chet. The Omar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Elazar. For Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, Ein loy lahakadosh baruch hu ba'olamoy ela yiras shamayim bilvad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only has a person in this world based on his yiras shamayim, like it says, Hakol b'dei shamayim chutz mi yiras shamayim. Shenemar says vi'ato Yisrael. And now, O Israel, ma Hashem elokecha shalom me'imoch. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu ask of you? Ki im liyira, like. Is it not just Yira? Again, like the Gemara Darshans in the 5th parak in Brachos, Hakol b'dei shomayim chutz mi Yira shomayim. V'ksiv, it also is another pasuk along these lines. Vayomer la'adam hein Yiras Hashem hi chachma. Behold, Yiras Hashem, it is chachma. Shekein b'loshin Yevani korin la'achas hein. That the loshin Yevani in Greek, the word hein means singular. It's unique, and therefore referring to the Yiras Hashem as being most unique. Tistayim, therefore you conclude that indeed it was Rabbi Elazar who praises the Yiras Shamayim beyond anything else. Says the Gemara, Darash Rav Ula. Rav Ula makes the following drasha, my dirsi, what's meant in the pasuk, Al tirsha harbe. Do not be so wicked. Don't have much wickedness. Ask the Gemara, Harbe hudilo lirsha, ha me'at lirsha. A lot of wickedness he can't have, but a little bit he could have. Ela misha achal shum v'reichoy noidef. Yachsur v'yoicha shum acher v'yehei reichoy noidef. A person who eats shum, he eats the bad smelling shum, and that garlic then causes his breath to smell. Is he going to go ahead and then eat more shum to then have his friend be more even disgusted by the smell of that shum? Certainly not. So too, when a person sins, it's bad enough. When a person sins, it's terrible smell. The fact that he's going to sin more, it's even going to be more terrible. So therefore, certainly, even a little bit is bad, but it means don't think that because a person says to himself, I sinned a little bit, what's so if I sinned a little bit more? No. The fact that a person sins a little bit is bad enough. It's certainly offensive. To then sin even more, it's a greater offense. Dorash Rava Bar Rav Ula Ma'idich, see what's meant in the pasuk. Ki ein chartzubois lemoisom ubori ulam. The pasuk says, because there are no ties binding them to their death, and the healthy ones are sound, are ulam, are strong. Omar Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Gemara Darshans, lo dayan lerishoyim she'ein charedim ve'atzevim miyom hamisa. Is it not enough that the rishoyim are not fearful and sad at the coming day of their death? Ela shelibam bori lohen ka'ulam, but that their hearts should be strong, should be healthy for them, just like a wide hall, like a big ballroom. V'hainu doma Rabba, and this is what Rabba explained, my dichsiv, what's meant by the pasuk. I'll read the pasuk in its entirety. Zedarkam kesel lomoy. This is the ways of their folly. Va'achareim befihem yirtzu selo. And after them, they speak smoothly. Says the Gemara to make the following drushes. Zedarkam kesel lomoy. It is their folly. Yoidim rishoyim. The wicked ones know shedarkam lemisa, that their ways are leading to death. V'yesh lahem chelev al kislam, and they have fat that covers up their kidneys, that they don't have the sense to understand that they better fix themselves up before it's too late. Maybe you'll say it's shichecha, they forget about the day of their death and therefore they're b'shoigeg. That's the end of the verse. And that's what it means, that at their end they speak smoothly. They sometimes even justify their bad acts and they ignore death altogether and say, let us drink and let us eat and let's be merry, because l'machar namus. Says the Gemara, now back to our Mishnah. There's a machlokes in our Mishnah between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yosi. The Tanakama says, Kechas al ner, kechas al Hashem, and kechas al psil is going to be chayov. When a person extinguishes a flame because he wants the oil, or because he wants that the ner doesn't break from the heat of the flame, or maybe because he wants to then save the psil, and therefore he extinguishes, according to Tanakama, is chayiv. According to Rabbi Yosi, he's going to be potter in all of them except for the psil. So the Gemara wants to then understand what is Rabbi Yosi's position. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi kaman svirale. To whom does Rabbi Yosi hold like? Now there's a machlokes about davar she'eino miskaven. If a person, malach she'eino tzricha legufa. When a person does a malacha, but not for its intended use. The classic example again is if a person were to then dig a hole, which would be a malacha of charisha on Shabbos. He goes to the sada, he digs a hole, and therefore he would be chayiv for digging a hole on Shabbos. However, if a person is not interested in digging a hole whatsoever, he just needs the dirt, the earth that's inside the hole. He needs the dirt for some other purpose. Therefore, he digs the hole. That's called a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he's going to be chayiv. But according to Rabbi Shimon, he's going to be potter. Because after all, if he can get the dirt in a different way, he'd be happy to do so. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, he'd be potter. So the Gemara says now, Rabbi Yosi, who says that he's going to be potter for then extinguishing the flame because he wants to then save the shemen, or because he wants to save the ner itself, who does he hold like? Ik Rabbi Yehuda svirale. If he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, the malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is chayiv, then afilu b'hanach nami lechayiv. Then let him also say chayiv for then when he extinguishes, because of the purpose of saving the oil or saving the ner itself, not just for saving the psila. V'ik Rabbi Shimon svirale. And if he holds like Rabbi Shimon that a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is potter, then psila nami liftar. Then let him also say that the psila would be potter when he's then extinguishing the flame for the psila. And that, yet he says in the Mishnah, chutz mina psila, that for that he's going to be chayav. Omar Ula. Ula says the following. La'olam ki Rabbi Yehuda svirale. Really, the opinion of Rabbi Yosi follows Rabbi Yehuda that malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is chayav. V'kesov Rabbi Yosi soiser almanas livnois b'mekoymoi have soiser. He says that, some background first. When it comes to the malacha of soiser, it's the opposite of boine. Boine is a malacha of binyan. Soiser malacha is destroying a binyan. Now, a regular destruction is considered to be mekalkil, and that's potter. That's not chayiv chatas, that's potter aval osir midrabanan. However, if it's for the intended purposes to rebuild, then soiser is going to be chayiv when a person breaks down a building. So too when it comes to other things that are the opposite. Let's say somebody who is writes, that's a malacha d'oraisa of ksiva. When he erases, it's a malacha d'oraisa of mechika. So again, if he's going to then erase in order then to write, then it's going to be a malacha. So too over here, when he extinguishes the flame, if it's for the purpose of doing a malacha afterwards, so therefore, that's going to be a positive act, something that's going to be a malacha and not a kilkul. So with that background, let's understand over here the Gemara. So Ula explains the following. Ula says, La'olam ki Rabbi Yehuda svirle. Rabbi Yossi follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that Malacha She'eina Tzricha L'Gufa is chayiv. If that's so, we ask, so why does he potter when it comes to then extinguishing the flame for the oil and for the ner? V'ksav Rabbi Yossi soisa amanas livnois b'mekoymei have soiser. Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that not only does soiser has to be also in order to then rebuild, but it also has to be rebuilding in the same place. And therefore, if in the same place it's going to be chayiv, if it's rebuilding in a different place, then it's going to be considered a separate act, and therefore it's going to be potter. Because he looks at it as two separate things. It's not going to be soiser for the b'niyah, it's soiser, that's one act, and the b'niyah, which is in a different place, is a different act. Only when it's in the same exact place, then it's going to be a soiser, that's going to be a soiser almanas livnos in that place, which would be one act, in order to then rebuild there, and therefore be chayiv for soiser. Almanas livnoi shelo b'makoymoi lo have soiser. But if it's on condition that he will build not in its place, then it will be soiser. So again, one more time. Riksover Rabbi Yossi soiser almanas livnoi b'makoymoi have soiser. If he's going to be soiser the binyan in the same place, then it's soiser. But if it's going to be almanas livno shelo b'mekoymoi lo have soiser, even though again he plans to rebuild and he's going to use the raw materials, but since it's in a different place, according to this opinion of Rabbi Yossi, Ul explains, then he will not be over soiser. And so too over here, when it comes to our case of extinguishing the flame, so since he does so for the purpose of the oil or for the ner, when he relights the flame some other time, that's considered to be in a different place. Masha'enke, when it comes to the psil, the wick itself is the thing that is then holding the flame. When he extinguishes the flame in order to then relight the wick, and therefore then use the same wick, that's considered to be for the same place, and only there would he be chayiv. Ask the Gemara, is that so? Michti, Amalei Rabba Michti. Let us look into this. Let's analyze this. Kol malachos yalfin eluma mishkan. We learn all of the malachos of Shabbos from the Mishkan, because the Torah juxtaposes the psukim of building the Mishkan and the Easter of Shabbos. So we learn all of the lamentes malachos from the building of the Mishkan. V'hasam soisa amanas livnois shelo b'mekaymohu, and there by the Mishkan, it's breaking down the Mishkan, not on condition to rebuild it there, but in another place where we will travel and rebuild and encamp. Omarle Ula defends himself and says, Shiny Hasam. In the Mishkan it was different. Kivan Dichsiv, it says, Al Pi Hashem Yachanu. On the mouth of Hashem, on the say-so of Hashem, did they encamp. And therefore, therefore, even though they did encamp in another place, it was the say-so of Hashem that's considered to be all one act, and therefore it's considered to be in that place. Whereas when a person says Ula, according to Rabbi Yossi at least, when he builds and he decides to then, when he is soiser and then he decides to rebuild in another place, it's two separate acts. You can't look at it one big picture. Again, Masha'enka, when it comes to the Mishkan, that's considered one big picture because it's all with the Tzivu of Hashem. So even when he then dismantles the Mishkan, then when he then rebuilds the Mishkan in another place, it's considered to be one big act. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Rabbi Yochanan argues, La'olam k'Rabbi Shimon Sirlei. Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah holds like Rabbi Shimon that a Malacha She'eina Tzricha L'Gufa is potter. And that's why he says that when it comes to extinguishing a flame for the oil or for the ner, then it's going to be potter because he's not doing so for the activity of extinguishing, but rather for a different act. If he could go ahead and save the oil or the ner in a different way, he'd be happy to do so. Umayshna psila, but the obvious question is, what's psila any different? Why, when it comes to then extinguishing the flame for the psil, for the wick, does he say he's chayav? Kidoma Rav Hamnuna v'yitem Rav Ada bar Ahava. We're talking about when he wants to singe the wick in order to then allow it to then be relit more easily and better afterwards. So therefore the malacha of extinguishing is for the intended purpose that he then relight that same wick better. So therefore the extinguishing itself is a malacha shetzricha legufa. Says the Gemara, that in this case, when he's singeing the wick in order to then relight it afterwards, so it relights better, more easily, even according to Shim, that's going to be a tikkun of the mana of the kli. Omar Rava says, Dekanami, let us medayik like indeed Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, Diktani shehu oise pecham. It says in the Mishnah that he makes charcoal. He positively makes a singe on the wick in order to then make charcoal so that it will be relit in a better way the next time. Velo ketani, it doesn't teach nasis pecham. It doesn't say that it became pecham, which we mashma like the first opinion of Ula, that it just became charcoal, but really he's not intending it for the wick itself. Shma Mina, therefore we can derive indeed a diuk from our Mishnah, indeed like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan.